there's only two ways to truly build wealth in this country.
Yep.
It's either through owning your own business or building wealth through owning real estate.
That's correct. Welcome back to Cash Flow, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. I'm your host, Jason Yoss. Today, I have a special guest with me, somebody I've been trying to get on the podcast for a while, David Hussein.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
Hey, man, I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
I really, first of all, want to give you a shout out to Beers and Cheers, an annual event that you do that I was fortunate enough to be invited and got to participate a little bit. Awesome event, great charity. Thanks so much for putting that on. And I was able to wrangle you in to come on the podcast after we got involved. So thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And it couldn't have been done without my business partner, Andrew Greer. He's a big
Greer.
part of Beard and Cheers. It was his, actually, brainchild. And I had no idea what we were doing the first year.
Yeah.
When we were doing it, I was just like, okay.
Until the rest of us walked out?
Yeah.
Or
No. That was the 2 years before that.
Fair
we were
enough.
just upstairs at AleSmith, and it just... I had no idea that was Beers and Cheers.
But for a good cause, too. I mean, how much you've raised, how many toys are in that warehouse after, too, all the stuff that you're doing.
You know, it's funny. We real quick, we talked, Andrew talked to the owners, and they said we're one of their biggest purchasers, at least from last year. They did have somebody come in and buy like $200,000. Of course, they have those big orders. They come in the crates, or not crates, what are they called? Steel containers of trains. You know, some people will buy like that, but last year we were one of their biggest purchasers.
I think it's amazing. Again, like for Marine, like I'm always like Toys for Tots is something that I'm big in sponsoring, but the way you guys bring it, it's awesome. So
Thank you.
I want to get a little bit back into your background, and I want to talk to you about real estate in general. Team lead over at the Real Estate Pro Team, right?
Yep.
And there it is, representing, of course. Tell me a little bit about how you got into real estate and how you made it all the way up to a team lead here.
I was supposed to become a lawyer, and I really didn't want to.
Good thing you didn't do that.
I don't think I would have even stayed a lawyer. I would have turned it into some kind of business.
Right.
And so the agreement I made with my parents was I would get into real estate, but it would be commercial. Okay. So I started as a runner at Lean Associates in Temecula, and that didn't really work out. It was like 2 years, and so I got into project management because I had to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I've kind of been paying the bills ever since. And I saved up some money through project management. I had a small business class that I was taking because I really didn't like project management. And in that small business class, I had to create a business, and I had to find a subject matter expert. And Andrew was the only person that I really kind of admired in real estate.
Right.
So we had worked together at P.F. Chang's 12 years before that or something like that, a long time ago. So I knew him. I hit him up. The guy was gracious enough to give me it was 2.5 hours of his time. Have you seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember when
Wait,
Donnie...
were you guys doing lines in the restaurant? I mean, that's
No.
Andrew. Yes, way to go, brother.
No, absolutely not.
No, we don't condone drugs.
No, Andrew's a straight shooter. In the scene where he's like, "You show me a check for $72,000, I'll quit my job right now." Right. It was kind of like that, but in terms of mindset.
Right.
I had never thought of things the way he thought of things, and it was. He was like, "How do I do this?" Everything was approached with, "How do I solve this problem?"
Right.
How do I? And it was a very resourceful approach to things, and it made you adapt really quickly. So
Right.
he's like, if you needed to make $15,000 by the end of this month, or somebody in your family dies, what would you do?
How would you do it?
How would you do
Great
it?
mindset, too. Great question.
Dude, it unlocked so many different ways. It's such a simple thing.
Right.
But I had been an employee my entire life.
Yeah.
I had exchanged time for money my entire life. So I never thought about it that way. And when he did that, this is 2018 at Fall Brewing on 30th.
Nice.
And nothing's been the same ever since.
So you jumped basically 2 lives in real estate, right? You started
Yeah.
commercial, took a second off, and then Greer kind of helped you come back in. When did you start, and how was that? How was that like?
I pretty much started going full time at the end of 2019. I had saved up some money. I really didn't like project management because of like the politics, and you're not really making or doing anything that you're super passionate about. In tech, at least for me in tech, I wasn't super passionate about what we were doing. So at the end of 2019, I started to like work towards being full time. I was very absent at my corporate job. I feel really bad.
I love that.
Sorry to those guys. But I had a start conversation with my manager. I was like, "Hey, you deserve better. I need to depart."
Right.
So at the end, towards the end of that year, I basically like went full time in real estate, and then I had some pretty good deal flow. I had like potentially $3 million in business, and so I had saved like 60 grand because I was like still carrying like we had family expenses and we had my own expenses, and my burn rate was like 60 grand for the year. Right. So I needed 60 grand for 12 months. And if I couldn't get a deal by the end of that 12 months, I'll just get another project management job. Right. So
you gave yourself a kind of a safety net, basically.
Yeah. So we're almost to the finish line. And then COVID, the pandemic happens.
Go figure.
Yeah. So March 6th was the date or something like that when stuff started hitting the fan. And it was the end of March when March 6th was when all my clients said, "Hey, we're not doing anything."
It's a little uncertain right now. That's what's going on in the world. So we're not going to be buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
But Matt Davies said something during that time. And it was another thing called quarantine convention that Andrew held. And we weren't working together at this time. We were just friends. But he held quarantine convention. Do you remember that by any chance?
You know what? I actually do remember Andrew kicking off. And there's a lot of the whole like, well, let's get on Zoom.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's get on Zoom. We can't ostracize ourselves.
Yeah.
People are getting crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it became like this big thing. And it was one of the only things that San Diego real estate industry had in the moment.
Right.
Because we didn't know what to do.
Right.
We had no idea. There was like PED forums to do showings. We didn't know how to show houses, wear masks, social distancing, 15 minutes per house. There's only like 6 houses on the market.
I remember. It's funny that you bring up the actual craziness that we went through back then.
It was insane. And keep in mind, that's like my first 12 months as a full-time realtor.
By the way, welcome to real estate. Welcome to being a realtor. Oh, did you want to show home this weekend?
There was so much rapid adaptation that I had to go through. All pretty much on my own because I had like a mentor, but he wasn't there with me. It was the pandemic. The guy didn't want to be around me because,
And by the way, has he gone through a pandemic before? Nope.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of, honestly, I think I'm a better realtor because of the rapid adaptation we had to go through.
Right.
And a lot of resourcefulness that we had to, take in or force out of ourselves.
I love that.
And so anyways, quarantine convention happened. And I think that's it.
So you find this niche, okay? Let's talk about, you alluded a little bit, mentorship. Like Andrew a little bit, who else is your mentor? And more importantly, like how did that help you create a real estate philosophy?
I spent most of my life listening to people that were not where I wanted to be. And I didn't realize that until I made a really big mistake.
Right.
Something
We're going to talk about that mistake.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that.
I didn't realize that until then. And then, everything happens for a reason. I fully believe that. And so I began to learn my lesson through these like failures. Right. I call them lessons. I don't call them failures.
Absolutely.
Like I said in the beginning, Andrew helped me kind of change my mindset from, exchanging time for money to, experience for money, right? Skill for money.
Right.
And so I guess my philosophy for real estate is buy, sell, invest, retire.
Right.
And I took it from Gary Massa. Shout out to Gary Massa. I'm pretty
sure. Good person to steal from.
Yeah, right. Way, he probably took it from somebody else. But nonetheless, it kind of maps out your life in building wealth in America, at least. Have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Of course, and that was a huge influential book for me, and I'm assuming you've read it as well?
Yeah, I've read it a couple of times. I read it when I was like 16 for the first time, and I had no idea what the heck it was talking about.
Right.
And then I kept, I read it over the years after that. But in there, Robert talks about how there's only 2 ways to truly build wealth in this country.
Yep.
It's either through owning your own business or building wealth through owning real estate.
That's correct.
It's never about exchanging your time for money. You cannot become a millionaire, or I'm not a millionaire, but you cannot build generational true wealth through exchanging your time for money like that, like being an employee.
Right.
You have to have some stake of ownership
Absolutely.
in something, right?
I'm 100% believer of that. And not to mention just the ability to have a vehicle that you can leverage your skill set, your education, your investment in order to exponentially grow that wealth. Because you're right. If you make, $100,000 a year and you got to work, work 40 hours a week to earn that $100,000, like, okay, well, there's a finite time you're going to be working. So, but if you can invest some of that money and it can work on its own time while you sleep, that is how you build wealth. And so it's important that you bring up that case. So let's talk about that one specific example about learning by failure.
So I said before that like I spent a big portion of my life listening to people and letting them influence my decisions based on, they weren't where I wanted to be in life. Right. And now when I'm looking to make a decision, a crucial one, I pay attention or at least place a lot more value on people that, have what I want or are on a path or are where they are in life. This was a terrible soundbite, but
no. It only makes sense. And it goes to a lot about surrounding yourself with people that you trust, not just from like a wealth or a well-being standpoint, but also from a financial wealth standpoint. Yeah. And the people you're surrounded with, are they doing well financially? Are they doing it the right way? Yeah. Because those are the people who are going to be in your ear. And unfortunately, when we start out, a lot of us aren't surrounded by those type of people. And it could be friends and family.
You don't know any better.
You don't know any better.
Because and nobody teaches you this stuff in school. Nobody prepares you for this. No mentor truly knows that you should know this stuff until you're there in front of it and you lose it.
So you were there in front of it?
There was a house that I absolutely love, and I drive by it sometimes.
What year is this?
2019. Before I went full time, I was still a W-2 worker. I was making like $140,000 a year. I could totally have afforded a house. In 2019, I could have.
Where's the property?
It's in Tecolote Canyon, but in the Linda Vista side of Tecolote Canyon. Beautiful westerly views. It's beautiful, man. Yeah. I still look at it now.
You're gonna buy it just to buy it one day, just to be like, I got it.
What's funny is I sometimes send letters to my childhood home. Same family still owns it, asking them to buy it, and I put a little picture of my brothers and I send it like once a year. That's same letter.
So you saw the property and you had an opportunity, or it was just on the market and you woulda, coulda, shoulda.
So at that time, and I always tell this to people that are W-2 wage earners, get pre-approved and purchase a house before you go 1099. And the reason for that is because ultimately you have to restart the timeline with the banks. If you do 1099, you have to wait 2 years. Yep. And for me, it took way longer to get to the point where I was making the 140 on paper to be able to qualify for a house. Right. It took me until like 23.
And as 1099 employees, we use all our write-offs against our taxes, and then the lender's like, well, according to your taxes, you don't make that much money. It's like, what? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if it wasn't for me depreciating my car and stuff like that, I would not have been able to qualify for the house I have now. But so anyways, in the moment, I can pretty much buy this place, and the payment would have been like $3,200 or something like that. It was everything that I needed it to be for the next 10 years, really. I just listened to the people I'd been listening to for a long time, and I didn't end up buying that house. Because I didn't know any better. I did not have real estate, friends. I didn't have lenders as friends. I didn't have any real estate owners as friends that were giving me advice. Really, I was in an isolated environment. Right. And in fact, that's most people.
Right, that's true.
Most people don't have a wealthy investor or an investor nonetheless, or an investor-oriented realtor as a friend. And so they don't think about these things.
Yeah, the goal was, I can't do that. It's not possible.
That's not for me.
Nobody showed them it's actually an easy pathway. Just do X, Y, and Z, and you're there. Nobody's ever shown them.
Even with me starting in real estate, I could have afforded that house afterwards. Because my burn rate was $3,000 a month, Yeah. Anyways, and I could have had roommates. So I ended up not buying that house. That house sold for like $725 or $750 or something, $745 or some small number, and it's well worth over like $1.35 now.
Just a handful of years.
But that house was for me to lose.
You needed it. You needed that to jumpstart I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah.
I think you told me, and this is a great segue, that later on, you didn't let that kind of adversity, stop you on a deal that like maybe was past go,
Yeah.
maybe, but you're like, no, we're going to get this and it's going to work.
Yeah.
So how did that affect that next one that you shared? And I think it's so heartfelt when we're talking about your parents.
So my parents have been living in they had been living in Menifee for 25 years, and they're in 78 and 82, and they have like they had a 3,000 square foot house it was like a 10,000 square foot lot, 26 fruit trees, just every immigrant family's dream. Okay.
It's just them two though.
Yeah, but it's just them two, and they
no one
rarely
else is
go
there.
upstairs. We don't know if the roof's fallen in or anything like that, right? So it was the perfect house for them. It was the perfect house for our family, but at this time, in this stage in their life, it wasn't, because it had like 17 stairs. It was gigantic. And they were an hour and like 15 minutes away.
Both you and the rest of your family, your brother were living down in San Diego, so it just wasn't the same as being right next door.
Yeah, and we had always talked. The family always had conversations when we get together about them moving to San Diego.
Yeah,
or us.
right.
They just always talking, but there was never any action.
Right.
So we basically kind of forced them to sell their house, right? But did our best to get them through the process and get it listed during the selling season. And we moved them in with us. And so there's a house that one of our team members brought to the team as an off market.
Awesome.
And I wasn't thinking about it. I was like, I'm not going to buy a fixer. But it met all the criteria that, my mom and my dad gave me. They were like, hey, the house has to be by Balboa Market.
Yeah, right. It's got to be here.
Yeah, it's got to be by Balboa Market. It has to be an amazing it has to be better than our original house. And it needs to be like walkable to things. All of this criteria, it's like champagne, taste on a beer budget, right?
Right.
We couldn't afford it. The only way we could have afforded it is if we bought a fixer, right? And there's this like little sliver of fixers that don't work for flippers,
Right.
but work for retail buyers, and it just takes a little bit of work to make that house work, right?
Yep.
And that's where this house fell in. And I had never purchased in that sweet spot.
Right.
So I walked this house, and I was like, this is $750 all day. They wanted $800, but $750 was like my max.
Right.
That sliver was the 800 number.
Yeah.
And so you asked, like, what's the pass go criteria?
Right.
This did not meet the pass go criteria. However, it was the right decision for my family and I, and ultimately, I ended up buying the house against the advice of my dad, and he was like, "This is not happening."
Did you have to fight for it? I mean, I know the market in the way it has been, like with multiple offers. Did you have to come out of your like where you wanted to be comfortably?
Yeah. Yeah. So the answer is simply yes. We lost the house originally.
Okay.
And it was brought to me at $750, and I said, "Okay, that works." But then it got bid up to $800 because there was a bait and switch offer that was accepted.
Love those. No offense to you fixers and flippers out there, but offering X and then coming in during due diligence and going, you know what? After all the work I've seen, I can only give you Y.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what happened. They got the sellers to want $800 for it after they had already been okay with $750,
Right.
but they wanted to beat out. I was against 8 offers.
Yeah.
They wanted to beat everybody else out, and then they came back and said, we'll do $750. And so anyways, they were stuck at 800, and I could have like fought for it to be lower. But then I started thinking about, and this is where it comes in, the philosophy of like,
Right.
you got to do what's right for your family in the moment, especially when it comes to real estate. I tell my clients this all the time.
Yeah.
They ask like, hey, is it the right time to buy? I say, is it the right time for you and your family to purchase ultimately? And is this the right house for you? And that's what I always ask. And that's what I asked myself in the moment. And I wanted to buy this house like with good karma around it and make sure that like, my parents are moving into good energy. And ultimately we went with the 800 number, gave them 3 weeks back into the property. And I stopped looking at it as a flip.
Right.
I stopped looking at it as that kind of investment and focused more on like
This is our home.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is where we're going to be. Look, I hear this from realtors all the time, and I genuinely believe in this statement. They will tell their home buyers, not their investors so much, but their home buyers, like, when it talks to you, that's the one. Like, what are you doing haggling over a couple percent? Like, if it talks to you, that's the one. Yeah. And it sounds like you knew this was the one. It fit what was going to be for your family, and ultimately you're like, I think this is going to be the right pull. And so you pulled the trigger.
Had we not done that, we would still probably be renting.
Be looking.
Yeah.
parents would still be in your house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my family and they're immigrants. They're refugees actually. I don't even want to call them immigrants. They're refugees,
Right.
and they come from they had to leave everything behind,
Right.
and so they're risk averse. They want
Absolutely.
safety and stability
Absolutely.
and predictability and manageability.
Absolutely.
It's the opposite of what I do every single day. you know?
Yeah.
That's the opposite of real estate investing. So
Absolutely.
when my mom walked into the house and the foundation's ripped up, the walls are gone, the framing's in,
So what have you done?
I have a picture of her face right when she walked in, and she looks mortified.
Right.
Yeah. But I had a vision. I had seen this before. I was working with a really legit contracting team behind me, and Andrew was behind me as well. So I felt very confident. I was surrounded by a team of experts.
Right.
You know.
This time you had the people in your ear saying, here's the yes, you can.
Yeah.
And this is the possibilities that you're going to see. And walk me through the end piece when mom and dad moved in and it was all done and how it looked at that point in time.
Well, I let her, what's funny is I could have flipped the house for like 85 to 87 grand.
You're like, Mom.
Yeah, I could have easily done it for
Yeah.
way cheaper. But there was an extra 100 that was spent because I let her just take free reign with design. She would always use, this is my last bathroom. This is my last kitchen. This is my last house. This is my last backyard. So
Fair enough.
it got very expensive very quickly. And I mean, it was their money. So
Right.
let them spend it to a degree.
To a degree, right.
So anyways, when they finally walked in at the end, it was exactly what my mom had chosen. I had a designer that I paid some money, Melanie Renee Designs, great job.
Awesome.
And she helped design the interior layout and the finishes, and she worked really graciously with my mom multiple times.
Hand in hand to make it her vision actually come out into reality, which is absolutely, if you haven't worked with a designer before, if you have that trouble getting what's in your mind out into reality, they actually can really make that happen. I stand by it all the way, not just for doing a flip or doing a remodel, but for any kind of interior work or exterior work. So
I didn't even know how valuable it is until it was done. And I was like, oh, I don't have to decide on all this stuff.
Everybody has a place. Everybody has a place in our market.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to hear how that worked out. All said and done. Now, even though you put more money in you wanted it, but your parents are happy, what do you think? What's the value of the home now?
Oh, so we bought it for $800. We put 180 into it after everything. I put some of my own money into it. So that's why the number went to that. And then right now it's easily, at the time we purchased it, had it been renovated, it would have been worth 1,175. Today, houses there are trading for 125 to 135, depending on footprint, finish, where it's located in the area. But this is North Claremont, so it's ideal for everybody. It's around the corner from the 52. It's by Balboa Market. So it's definitely worth that 125 to 135 range.
And like we had talked about before, they're going to be there until they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
5 years from now, it's going to be worth a lot more, and 10 years from now, even almost probably double. So
a second part to the vision I had was values there range about $980 to $1,000 a square foot.
right.
I can build above my garage or build my garage into it, both of these, for $350 a square foot.
Right. That's right.
So immediately we're making double that
Yeah.
in value just by adding garage. And it's easy to do if you know the right people to call.
I was just going to say, if you know that it's possible, if you are surrounded with the right people, you can see these avenues, these approaches, and make these decisions. So I really love the contrast of those two aspects, the way to go. Let's kind of switch here and talk about, okay, learning lessons, walking away from these two things. What are you telling the young David, entrepreneur, getting into real estate? Like, what are you telling them? Like, is it just, hey, surround yourself with the right people? Like, what are you trying to tell them to set them up for success?
I think one thing I didn't really understand or comprehend the definition of was the real meaning of resilience.
Right.
And it's tested every single day, right? You discover a new version of that every single day. And resilience is one of those things that you don't quite know how badly you need it or how much you have already until it's on the table.
Pressure. I can't tell you how much I hear that word used in our industry, but not just managing a team of young agents, but doing your own investments and as well as looking after your family. Is there times when you were like, dude, I'm not comfortable with this? And how do you deal with that?
I have imposter syndrome like every minute of every day. Because here's the thing. I'm the youngest in a Middle Eastern family where we make fun of each other to show our love.
Right.
So constantly I'm being questioned, right?
Yes.
And my business partner, Andrew, does this all the time. He questions me and jokes and stuff like that. So it gets added on to the imposter syndrome,
Fair
right?
enough.
But at the same time, I'm of the mindset that, hey, if they can do it, why can't I do it?
Why can't I do it?
Tell me why. Explain to me why, David. Why can't you do it? And I rarely have an answer. Sometimes it's like, it's a stupid answer, like, oh, they were like spoon-fed this or something like that. But that's not an acceptable answer.
No.
The acceptable answer is get to it, get skilled, or can they do it for cheaper than your time and your effort into it?
Your effort, and I think you had told me once, you're like, can I go a little bit farther? Can I just get through today? What a great philosophy. What a great mindset. Let me just get through today.
Last year was really challenging for me, and I learned a lot about myself, a lot about what I'm capable of that I didn't even – I always say, like, you can't yet comprehend what you're capable of.
Yeah.
Because you just haven't been there yet.
You haven't
These
been
are
tested.
Uncharted waters, right? And last year taught me a lot, and I remember there was a moment where I was like, F this.
Yeah, right.
What is this all for? But then I came back to the people that are depending on me and why they're depending on me.
Your why.
And that was pretty awesome because I began to define, like, I know we haven't talked about this part, but I began to define why these people are depending on me. And it's because of what I've done so far in my life for myself, but also for these people.
Yeah.
And I began to quantify that. I was like, oh, this is pretty awesome. David, you've come all this way and you've done all these things since you were that, everything else that you've been in your past life, right? I'm not going to talk about it on the podcast, but
No.
You know what I mean?
Understanding your why is important.
Yeah.
And to hear you, this is a perfect example for our audience, for people listening, about like growing up in and maturing into your better entrepreneur self. Surround yourself, moving yourself with people who might, be second question everything on a risk averse basis, to surround yourself with people who can tell you, here's why you can do it. Here's why you're going to succeed. And if you don't feel that pressure, if you don't feel like you're not going to make it regularly, you're not pushing hard enough. And I'm here. I think I heard once somebody say, look, if you're not facing bankruptcy once a year, you're not really, you should be pushing harder, And I don't know if you have to go to that level, but I definitely agree with the pressure. And from my background in the property management space, I'm blessed not only to have a great team, but also to be surrounded with players like yourself that are not just good at what they do, but have the right why and the right mindset. Because then when we come up with problems, when we are in pressure situations, there isn't a freak out moment. There's just like okay, well, what are options? How can we solve this together? And then looking back, it's like, yeah, that was tough then, but nowadays I don't balk at that. So.
Jason, that's pretty funny. You just talked basically about, you summarize becoming friendly with your fears. Becoming homies with your fears.
I don't want to be friends with my fears, but just the reality is I've got a couple years on the car, and I've just been through a couple roads, and again, people, their mindset and how they approach solving problems is what you need to know. Because when the rubber hits the road and you freak out, you tend to lash out and do things that, but if you take it, you learn from it, you grow from it, you're better, and the mindset is good. So I appreciate you coming on, sharing everything that you did today. It's crazy how in 30 minutes we could be doing this for another hour.
Has it been 30 minutes?
It's been 30 minutes.
Oh my God,
everybody, David Hussein, Real Estate Pro Team, thank you so much for coming and joining us. And for everybody out there, thanks for tuning in to the Cash Flow Podcast, where we talk about turning properties into profits. Take care.